Shalom, family. Thank you so much for joining us for this week's weekly news update, where we always get together to be informed without being overwhelmed. Amen and amen. Hey, it's raining over here again, guys. Just to let you know, for those of you who keep track of such things, another day of rain here out in the middle of nowhere. Hallelujah. We're always grateful for that. I'm always grateful for all of you who take the time to get together with us once a week. And we used to do these things all the time. Those of you that were newsies used to listen to news all the time, getting it all day long. And then some of you were completely disconnected. You didn't get any news updates. And so we had to find a happy medium because getting them too often makes you full of anxiety. And not getting them at all, well, then you don't know what's going on in the world. So we had to find that happy place, and we think we found it. I don't know. I think this weekly news pace seems to work. At least it does for me. We do have a website that we welcome you to bookmark at remnantwatch.com. That's remnantwatch.com. You always find the handy banner at the top that'll zip you right over to the latest news broadcast. So bring you right here to this one. Of course, we've got the handy guides here for survival, and there have been so many things that have come since we put those up that we have not taken them down. And then we do, of course, have this handy search bar for those of you that are new to the site. Maybe want to look back and take a look at some of the stories we've already covered and some of the things that we've been watching, right? Some of the historic things that have happened, like floods and things like that are once in a lifetime, once in 1,000 years. And so how often do we see that, that headline, right? How many of you remember that? And you saw a lot of headlines that kept repeating the same theme. Hey, this is once in 1,000 years. This is once in 500 years. How many of those are we going to have? Right? So how many know that you're in an unprecedented time when you keep hearing things like that? And so, again, just to encourage everyone, share the link. Encourage your friends. This is for those who are believers in Mashiach, believers in Messiah, and who want to look at things through the biblical lens. Now, again, depending upon where you're looking and how you're looking and so forth, some things may appear one way or another. But the point is that we're seeing things that confirm the word, confirm the scripture, and confirm the judgments that are falling upon the nations right now. And so I think a lot of people are really trying to decipher what they're seeing in the Middle East, for example, especially with regard to the United States and Iran. But it's much bigger than that going on right now. So there's a lot more happening in that theater of operations as we take a strong look at that. So we're going to be taking a look at that tonight. A number of stories. A lot of things are being a lot of the news is being dominated, of course, by the conflict going on in the Middle East. And Russia is warning the Iran conflict does risk sparking nuclear war in the Middle East. So I think everyone's a little bit concerned about that. The very thing that they're trying to prevent, the very thing that they went to war with Iran for, that, oh my goodness, Iran can't possibly have nuclear weapons. Well, the countries fighting with them do. And how many know that that's a weapon you use when you start to lose? Okay. And so that's a very dangerous thing. Kremlin is warning Iran war risks sparking a nuclear conflict in the Middle East. And Vladimir Putin's hardline ally, Dmitry Medvedev, has warned the war with Iran risks triggering a nuclear conflict in the Middle East. The former Russian president, now a senior security official, said Donald Trump had made a gross strategic error in taking on Iran and warned the region's biggest war may still lie ahead. And so conflict is far from over from what we're starting to hear. He claimed Gulf states could now seek their own nuclear shield, sharply raising the risk of war or conflict. And Medvedev said the likelihood of a nuclear conflict there, unfortunately, has increased as a result of this unprovoked, extremely dangerous war that the United States has started. He accused Washington and Israel of behaving like a bull in a china shop and pushing the region toward catastrophe. And I'm going to tell you right now, there's a whole lot of people throughout the earth that feel the same way, and not for political reasons, but because, and I would say many of them are even residents of Israel who are right now saying this was a really dumb idea. And so again, it's always the people on the ground, it's always the person on the street, it's always the guy, the average guy that's got to pay the bill that, these guys in these ivory towers decide is a good idea, right? And so it's always the little guy that's got to somehow figure out how to get through whatever it is that these guys in these ivory towers decide while they go to their 5-course linen served meals. And so, again, folks, we've got to realize that no one's coming to save you. You've got to become the deliverers yourselves. This is what you were anointed for, is to be the ones that make the difference in these types of times. And again, throughout history, that's exactly been the case. There are now over 50,000 American troops in the Middle East. I don't know if you knew that or not, but there's the arrival of 2,500 Marines and other 2,500 sailors, is keeping the number of American troops in the region at roughly 10,000 more than usual. So there are a number of troops that are already in the in the region, which of course brings just the number of potential deaths up. So the USS Tripoli entered the Singapore Strait earlier this month, and again, the arrival of Marines and sailors is keeping that number up. While it's still unclear just what the Marines from the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit will be charged with, U.S. officials say the president is weighing whether to try a larger attack, like venturing to seize an island or other ground, as part of Mr. Trump's effort to open the Strait of Hormuz. So all kinds of effort is going on there. And I got to tell you something, folks, this does not bode well. If you think Afghanistan was bad, and you think Vietnam was bad, and some of the other conflicts the United States went into and did not come out well, this one's probably going to be the granddaddy of them all in terms of, oh, what a stupid decision we made here. Okay. Because I think they underestimated the preparedness, and essentially we're at war with Russia and China. I mean, so just for all intents and purposes, this is becoming a proxy war with Russia and China, who are clearly resupplying the Iranians. And so therefore they're using the Iranians as a proxy shield to do war against the United States and to weaken the United States. And the United States is depleting necessary armaments for its defense, and it's using them for offense instead of defense. What that means is now those countries that are sitting back doing the counting bullets, they're going down. So it's a very dangerous thing for us to be doing right now. And Russia is taking satellite images of the U.S. air bases in days before the Iranian attack. And Zelensky is saying that it was, the Russians, of course. It's always the Russians. But there is some truth to this, that the technology that the Russians have is advantageous against American forces. I mean, again, you're talking about a on-par enemy. So if they go to help your opposing force, now that opposing force is now at an on-par level. They got leveled up by their ally. Okay, so looks like the East has a better. They have a better NATO than NATO. They've out-NATO'd NATO. NATO's looking pretty lame compared to the East and their alliances there. So things are looking very grim for that. And of course, UN peacekeepers dead, and others fighting for their life as a base in Lebanon came under fire. And this was just, of course, this last week, as a missile has been fired from Yemen toward Israel. And the IDF said it was intercepted. There were, of course, UN peacekeepers again dead in Lebanon. And so this is becoming, again, very, very dangerous all throughout the entire region. And essentially, you can read more about this, but essentially what they're now complaining about is, of course, even the peacekeepers are in peril. Well, I got news for you. That's nothing new. That was going on during the entire Gaza campaign, which many people forgot about. There were news reporters that were being assassinated. I think something almost 200 news reporters were killed. That's just unheard of in any war situation, that the news is taken into is fired upon, is made an enemy. We heard about medical workers that were killed, children that were killed, weapons that produce heat at 6,500 degrees. And folks, everything melts. Metals melt at 2,500 degrees, and they had weapons at 6,500 degrees, vaporizing human beings. And so again, we saw all this, and the world didn't react. And now it's getting to see it on a broader scale. Maybe now the world will react to some of these things that are really ridiculous, They shouldn't even exist. You talk about nuclear weapons. There's a lot of weapons that shouldn't exist, and there's no really good reason for. So we're going to continue to see more stupidity as man comes to the end of war being a solution to conflict and difficulty. So hopefully that will finally come to an end. One of the spectacles that we may be about to be treated is the death of massive numbers of people using some of these very horrific weapons. And Iran is not pulling its punches. Iran is being very direct in saying that ground troops will be set on fire. They are not playing around. They've made good on a lot of their threats. So I would take seriously the threats made by Iran. I would, because they have so far followed through on threats that they have made. So Iran warns U.S. troops, ground troops, would be set on fire. And Pakistan says it will host U.S.-Iran talks. So Pakistan announced Sunday that it will soon host talks between the U.S. and Iran, though there's no immediate word from Washington or Tehran. And it was unclear whether the discussion on the month-long war would be direct or indirect. And, of course, there are those that would like to bring this to an end. There was a lot of reasons for it. There's a lot of pressure on both parties to discontinue and disengage immediately. There are bigger issues that are afoot, and this is turning out to be a very stupid argument that really needed to be resolved in a much more intelligent way. What a shock! Who looks surprised? Wipe that surprise look off your face. You know that you had that figured out a long time ago. Come on, sit down at the table. You knew it. I knew it. Everybody knows it. What are you blowing all this stuff up for? We're only going to have to sit down at the table anyway. You're not going anywhere. You're not going to blow things up forever. So eventually, guess where you're going to end up, guys? Hopefully you have a room that you haven't blown up that you can go sit down at a table and sign some papers and be done with the nonsense. Like it always ends up. So why are we doing this? Again, for human loss of life, for destruction, to create more real estate projects. I mean, it's utterly ridiculous, and it continues to be. All right. The Pentagon is now, as a result of this, diverting Ukraine defense aid to the Middle East. This presents new challenges because while the president's war with Iran was not an authorized action by the United States, the action in Ukraine was authorized by Congress and signed by the president. So this presents new challenges. The Pentagon is contemplating diverting weapons meant for Ukraine to the Middle East as the U.S. military has blown through critical munitions in its war against Iran. And so lethal aid could include air defense interceptor missiles ordered through a new NATO program, the Prioritize Ukraine Requirements List initiative, which partner countries buy U.S. weapons for Ukraine to aid in its war with Russia. So essentially seizing their inventory that they paid for. You seeing what's going on here, folks? You're going to have a lot of people not happy with the United States if they pull this off. So once again, to go to war that wasn't declared, you're pulling stuff that was authorized. This is going to get bad. It's just going to take only a minute for people to figure out the logic on it, and then it's going to be bad. And meanwhile, you got other groups that are starting to join this conflict, like the Houthis. And if you guys forgot, the Houthis were those who were putting our hurting on the American forces in the Gulf before the Iranians got involved. The Houthis are no joke, and they're joining in. Oh, this is going to get fun. Okay. And if you guys have been paying attention at all, you know, these are a very formidable group that are down in that area. The Houthis on Friday warned that if 3 lines are crossed by the U.S., Israel, or other Middle East countries, they will join the Iran war and fight back. Yemen-based group, backed by Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, released 5 points issued by the Yemeni armed forces regarding the conflict. They include demands for a diplomatic solution to the conflict with Iran and a cessation of aggression against Muslim countries in Palestine, Lebanon, Iran, and Iraq, and the lifting of unjust siege on Yemen. And we affirm that our fingers are on the trigger for direct military intervention in any of the following cases. And so this entire region has now become a powder keg. And the good news is I think a lot of things are going to end up resolved. Unfortunately, the ones who started the war are going to probably end up being the countries that are no longer involved. The United States is probably going to lose all of its influence in the Middle East. It looks like it's dumping it as quickly as it possibly can. And Israel has lost dramatically in this conflict. to the point where I doubt seriously. And I mean, I would be shocked. But I've been surprised before. It can happen. But I would be shocked if any large companies reinvest in Israel after what we just saw. I think it's going to be a long road back for that country just to get back to what they were 6 months ago, much less trying to improve, just to get back to where they were before they started this 2 months ago, is going to be a Herculean effort. And they don't have the manpower. A third of their population has already left. People are making plans to depart. You have troops that are defecting. You've got people that are literally abandoning ship on the Zionist state. So it is not boding well for them. In fact, forces in the region are coming under attack, and 12 Americans are wounded in an Iranian missile drone attack in a U.S. military base in Saudi Arabia. So this is starting to, of course, mean that even bases that are out there are, of course, no longer safe places. And we started to see that just a couple of weeks ago, and it's just gotten worse. 12 U.S. service members were reportedly injured in Iranian missile and drone attacks in a military base in Saudi Arabia on Friday. 2 of the wounded service members are considered to be seriously wounded, and citing the U.S. and Arab officials, and at least 1 Iranian missile and several drones struck the U.S. Prince Sultan Air Base, the officials have said. So any bases in the Middle East that are American-owned are open targets, and there's quite a few of them. So what they're all finding out is as I said before, and we talked about this, guys, you remember this, go back, you'll hear me talking about it, months and months of this. What are you going to war with people who have hypersonic missiles for? You can't stop a hypersonic missile. A hypersonic missile moves too fast. You can't shoot it down. This is what's been hitting Israel. Israel's getting hit with hypersonic missiles that move too quickly to intercept. Even if you intercept them, they're moving so fast, the debris still does damage. I mean, it's a bad idea. We've gotten to the point where war is just a stupid idea all around. And now we're hearing this genius move because, why not? Iran's now vowing to strike tourist hotels because why not? That's a legitimate target. Let's just shoot hotels. That's great, right? That's a new deal. That's a new wrinkle. That'll make a lot of friends. And 5-star resorts are now legitimate targets. Iranian state-affiliated media reported that any hotel used by U.S. forces in the region would be considered a legitimate target as the U.S.-Israeli war with Iran nears its 4th week. So tying it to any Israeli or U.S. forces that stay at a hotel. You stay at a hotel, the hotel can be attacked. And it's declared that any hotel facility used by U.S. forces in the region is a legitimate target. Well, that's going to put the chill on your staying in different places. And I got news for you, folks. Not only is this a problem for the armed forces who will suffer as a result, but this is a dramatic shift for those businesses that depend on foreigners staying, especially military, staying in their hotels. That's partly how they make their money and stay in business. So that's going to dramatically shift that as well. So this really has to be contained as quickly as possible, or there won't be much left in the entire region, which is very sad, actually. And so, unfortunately, this is where we're headed at this point, and more troops are being sent in. So it doesn't look like the conflict is going to end unless we have a dramatic shift into peace negotiations, which looks like there's hope for, but so far it doesn't look good. And the people making money are the people in the oil business. They think it's great, right? Because oil prices are close to the highest level since 2022 as Iran negotiations failed to ease supply fears. And so this is causing those who are in the oil business to get very rich, very, very rich. The oil market remains worried about the Middle East supply disruption, despite President Donald Trump's pivot to negotiations with Iran. 2 Chinese container vessels tried to pass through the Strait of Hormuz, but were turned back. So this developed just this week. We're going to be talking a little more about that. But bottom line is that things are not well. And it's going to continue to affect the world economy. And it's going to be in ways that you didn't see coming. because it's not just the oil itself; it's what it impacts. It's the ripple effect. And so that's why you're going to see more and more headlines like this, where they're trying to put it on Iran. And Trump warns Iran to get serious about peace talks before it's too late, as Pentagon readies the final blow to the regime. Now, the regime is struggling. I will say this, although it looks impervious and looks like it's just pummeling through, that's not actually true. They are under massive economic pressure. The people in their own country really want to go ahead and be done with this. They don't want to continue to get bombed. So this is starting to have a very heavy toll. President Trump issued a warning to Iran Thursday morning, telling Islamic Republic officials to buckle down and get serious about negotiating to end an end to war before it's too late. As the U.S. military prepares an assault it hopes will be the final blow to the Tehran authorities. And the Iranian negotiators are very different and strange, the president posted on Truth Social. They are begging us to make a deal, which they should be doing since they've been military obliterated, with zero chance of a comeback, and yet they publicly state that they are looking at our proposal. Wrong. They better get serious soon before it's too late. So apparently, at least he believes that there's two channels of communication. This is a very common thing, by the way, in the Middle East. It's been going on, goodness, for 30 years that I've been paying attention. You have one public face that's very full of bravado, a lot of public, chest beating, while there's negotiation going on behind closed doors. That's very common in the Middle East. So political leaders and those that are power, or those in power, come out and play to their base. They do, because they are in a dangerous scenario and dangerous societies. And so, but that does not change the fact that they have to make negotiations behind closed doors, or, as the president did say, there will be bombs falling, right? So you're going to end up dealing with bombs falling, and hacking the FBI director isn't going to cut it. That, by the way, was a retaliation. You saw the Iran-linked hackers breach the FBI director's personal email, publish photos and documents. Okay, well, you can embarrass the guy, and you might even get him fired. Maybe he's a bad guy. Maybe you find out he's a bad guy. It doesn't change anything. These are the kinds of little cuts, though, that they will do. Iran-linked hackers have broken into FBI Director Kash Patel's personal email box, by the way, telling you that the FBI director cannot keep his stuff secure. There isn't data security out there. The only data security out there that I know of that exists, we patented, is the only unbreakable lock. Even the U.S. military doesn't seem to have that. Think about that. Okay? Think about the Church of Philadelphia and the key that closes that no man opens and no man shuts, and shuts that no man opens. It's a very powerful key. One house has it. And it's very dangerous. When I read these headlines, I get very upset, because I'm a veteran. I love my country, right? I want to see, things secure. I would like the United States to get its act together and then get secure. But it's very difficult to do when you can't even keep your communications secure. Your comms are not secure. When you have enemies listening in, that puts soldiers at peril. That puts military, that puts police, that puts law enforcement at peril. That's not smart. We need to fix that. We need to fix that. We need to fix our data security. And thankfully, we have a patent. ImageLock DX can solve that. Hopefully, we'll be able to contract with those that need that, because that's a very important transition. It's the only lock that will survive the digital AI era. So it is a very serious thing. As AI gets smarter, all other locks will fail. This lock's the only one that gets stronger as AI gets better. China, by the way, is preparing for war. They're mapping the ocean floor as they prepare for a submarine battle with the U.S. And again, they are watching the U.S.'s tactics during this conflict. China is conducting a vast undersea mapping and monitoring operations across the Pacific, Indian, and Arctic oceans, building detailed knowledge of marine conditions that naval experts say will be crucial for waging submarine warfare against the United States and its allies. And in one example, the Dongfang Hang 3, a research vessel operated by Ocean University of China, spent 2024 and 25 sailing back and forth in the seas near Taiwan and the U.S. stronghold of Guam, and around strategic stretches of the Indian Ocean, ship tracking data reviews by Reuters shows. And so they're tracking things underwater because, again, the wars that they are planning are tremendously destructive. So again, we've got to shut all this down because it will go no good place. If we don't stop it, it will destroy the very world they're all fighting for. The Trump administration is pitching a 15-point plan, and that got thrown out. So that didn't make it. It didn't even land. So the Iranians just tossed it. They completely disbanded it. And the Iranians have put forth, I believe it's like a 6-point plan for peace that requires compensation for damage and a promise that there won't ever not what do you call it, a truce or what have you, or a ceasefire. They don't want a ceasefire. They want a permanent, never going to attack us again agreement from the United States, which I think is a very good thing to ask for. It's a correct way to go about it. We don't ever want war again. Let's be done. So it doesn't look like the people in the West have quite gotten the message. They want to send 10,000 additional troops to the Middle East amid the tensions that are already going. So, like I said, they're continuing to talk like this. I think this is a terrible idea. Iran's defending their homeland. They've got an army 1 million strong. Okay, 1 million strong. Nothing unites a country like being invaded or attacked. That's going to unite that country. Whatever problems they had, you just became the boogeyman that united them. That's a really dumb idea. And not to mention the fact that they're going to roast you. They know the turf. So even the people that knew the turf with them, the Iraqis, who fought against the Iranians for 8 years to a stalemate. And so it goes to show you that even people that know that terrain, that doesn't automatically mean you're gonna come out with a victory. And so this is a very, very scary time period in the region. As a matter of fact, we're seeing harbingers. The scripture tells us where the eagle is, there the bodies, or sorry, where the bodies is, there the eagles will be gathered, right? And so many are seeing this harbinger of doom as thousands of crows swarm Tel Aviv skyline, sparking a harbinger of doom warning amid the Iran conflict. And this is actually not the first time that we've seen crow activity over Israel. The skies over Tel Aviv were flooded with a sea of crows on Tuesday, and what many people are saying is a harbinger of doom warning. Thousands of crows were filmed circling high-rise buildings, including the iconic Israeli towers, in dramatic footage that quickly went viral online. Many viewers linking the eerie scene to Israel's ongoing tensions with Iran, claiming the spectacle signaled a looming disaster. And I don't think it's a very good spectacle at all, my friends. I think it's a very bad omen, if there is such a thing, right? If we're going to believe in omens. I don't believe in omens, but I do believe that there are things that happen that you should go, right? And so I think what we're seeing is judgments that those who thought that they were right and good and should do what they were doing are now finding out that they were wrong. And so I do believe this is massive divine pushback against some things that I believe were completely inappropriate. Now, Iran, as I told you, is prepared to mobilize quite a few people. Take a look at this, guys. And it's very dangerous stuff. This is why I'm saying this is not smart. Russia's right. You could be igniting an unstoppable war. Iranian TV declares 1 million soldiers have mobilized to, quote, create hell for American forces. 1 million. They live there. So the U.S.-Israeli war against Iran is nearly 1 month in, and amid the ongoing escalation threats and warnings, Iran is touting that it is able to tap more than 1 million fighters for potential ground confrontation with the United States. That's a lot of folks. Okay, some 7,000 additional U.S. troops, mainly Marines and elite Army airborne troops, are currently headed toward the region amid speculation that President Trump will order a military operation to forcibly open the Strait of Hormuz, which could involve a high-risk island campaign, an effort to take over Karg Island oil export hub. So that may be what this was all about all along. It may have always been about grabbing that island. We don't know. And we're going to find out in the days to come. Is it possible that this conflict will then grow? I believe so. If the United States grabs actual physical territory, it will open itself up for real war. if the United States grabs part of Qatar or part of Iran or an island or anything, puts a flag in the ground in that part of the world, this is going to open up a can of worms to a level to which we have not seen, nor did we want to see. And I believe that's what they are trying to do. So this is going to be very, very bad. And that's their active duty, by the way. Jeff makes a great point. Then they have another million in reserves. No, folks, this is not a good plan. This is not a good plan. Nevertheless, I mean, the scripture tells us when you have 10,000 troops and you're fighting with someone who has 20,000, you send ambassadors of peace. That's what you do. And so now you see these headlines, and these are dropping hints, dropping little things. Is it real? I don't know. Maybe the impact is meant to cause people to stake a stir. UN diplomat is quitting, warns of possible nuclear weapon use in Iran. The ex posts an accompanying letter. Safas said he reached a decision after much reflection. He claimed that some senior officials at the United Nations were serving a powerful lobby. Uh-oh. Want to guess what that is? And so they want to drop the big one. They want to drop the nuke. So the thing they said they want to prevent Iran from doing, remember this now, guys. The thing they told all of us, we need to stop these guys from having this big bad boom boom. Now they're talking about, you better watch it or we're going to use our boom boom. That just told Iran exactly why they wanted to have one of those, because look what you're doing. You're forcing them into negotiations and forcing them to take terms they may not want because you got a big boom boom. Well, they want a big boom boom too, so you can't do that to them. That makes total sense. And it's actually selling in the world. It's selling in the world because the world's seeing the effect of the bullying, the bully effect. And it's not good diplomacy. This is a bad look. So, and I'm a patriot, and I'm telling you it's a bad look. I'm just saying, not a good way to go about this. This is going to backfire badly, and future administrations and American people, not to mention people in the West, I mean, people are just going to suffer, period. This is all bad news. None of this is intelligent. Most of it looks like it's being done by people that are very low IQ and don't have a lot of solutions, so they figure I'm a hammer, everything's a nail. In Egypt, shops and restaurants are being told to close early as an energy crisis is deepening. And so you're going to keep hearing more about this. The next big issue is going to be energy. And it's not going to matter how much money you have. They will ration you whether you have money or not. And so things are going to be getting it's not going to be about what resources you have. They simply will not have it to sell it to you. And that is without, guys, remember, we live in a country that's barely hanging on with its power grid, barely hanging on. Okay. All these things over there we're watching, blow up stuff over there, blowing up their power plants, blowing up things. One of those goes down in the United States, one of these major ones, and you got major problems in the whole country. 2 or 3 of them go down, we got real serious problems, right? So energy is going to become the new issue, the new big issue in the time to come here, folks. So you need to be thinking about that seriously hard. And again, being trapped in cities or situations where you really can't affect that in your life is a bad idea. I just can't tell you enough. A new oil shock is building. The next few weeks of war will be decisive for the economy. CNBC is reporting this, and I believe a lot of people agree with this, that the way in which this unfolds in the U.S. is going to make a big difference. Oil executives and analysts warn that the Straits of Hormuz needs to be reopened by mid-April, or oil supply disruptions will get significantly worse. And this is not just about oil, folks. Benchmark oil prices reflect some optimistic scenarios that could still come true, but the window for that is closing. And so that's why the U.S. is saying we've got to get the Straits of Hormuz open. We got to get it open now. We got to push back on these Iranians who are trying to close it. And they don't care. They've got more of a death cult or more of a suicide type mentality. Like, we will go down to the ship. You know, that kind of mentality is bad. Hard to negotiate with that. And so, you know, thankfully, I do think people still love their families. So we have to count on that. that love is real in the world still to this day, because hopefully there's enough of that left in the world that'll keep us from completely annihilating one another. And the hits just keep on coming. They don't stop. And so we saw like I said, the rejection of the peace plan. They tried to talk everyone into that. That didn't work. The president, I think, the president of the United States was trying to bully those things along. That did not go well. By the way, I think it was Russia and Iran. They were both sharing these propaganda videos. And so that doesn't bode well for our appearance, the way we are looked upon in the world. And a lot of leaders are using this to throw Western leaders under the bus. Like, oh, we're not going to, we don't want to listen to you because you guys are all just part of this crew. So this has really undermined us. And the way this was treated, a crazy Iranian AI-generated video shows a missile blowing up the Statue of Liberty and also references the Epstein scandal and lefty anti-war talking points. Okay, so, and I think that there's anti-war and then there's common sense, and I think there's anti-war on both sides. So I think making it a left-right conversation is not smart. By the way, speaking of effects domestically, what's happening in Laguna Beach, California? Loud sirens are unnerving residents. They thought they were being nuked. That's what was reported here, as they were hearing all kinds of sirens and so forth. So a lot happening in the earth right now, scaring people. It seems to be an effort to keep terrorist thinking moving in the earth. So I'm going to move quickly here, folks. Got a lot still to cover, but that's interesting that that's going on in Southern California. I think there was another story about power outages that continue to happen in California as well. I think there's a problem with that story, so I guess we won't be able to go to that. But yes, there were definite things happening with power and electricity in California. So 100,000, I believe, 100,000 people, if I remember the story correctly. Unfortunately, the link does not work. But it was 100,000 people, I believe, that were affected by that. So again, California having its challenges. And there's several U.S. states that are reporting a mysterious hum. This is not a new thing. So this actually keeps happening around feast days too, guys. So Passover, Shavuot, Sukkot. We keep hearing reports like this, mysterious hums, things going on underground. Several U.S. states' residents are reporting vibrating homes and sleepless nights. This has actually been quite a few reports of this. So something to keep an eye on, a mysterious humming noise that has been reported in neighborhoods across several U.S. states, rattling homes and leaving residents struggling to sleep. I think my theories, my postulation, what do you guys think? I love your thoughts, but I think it's underground city making, or cities themselves that are just coming alive because people are going down there. Underground there's much more going on underground than we knew about, especially as things like this are happening, right? So above the earth, we haven't heard about the horrific fires going on in Nebraska. I can't believe that's not getting any press. I'm not finding any stories about it. And it's hundreds of thousands of acres. The governor of Nebraska is, declared a state of emergency, and it's just like flying around the radar. So is this story. Gigantic heat dome is baking the whole U.S., maybe historic, scientists are saying. So once again, here we go, folks, with another one of those. This has only been once in the last 100 years. Another one of those 1 in 100 years type things, right? Smashing March heat records in 14 states. The U.S. as a whole, the gigantic heat dome that's baked the Southwest is creeping eastward and may end up being one of the most expansive heat waves in American history, meteorologists and weather historians have said. And it's not going away for a while, maybe not till the middle of next week as April starts. So basically the entire U.S. is going to be hot. It's going to get hot. Right? So what does this do for farming and what have you? I don't know. It's going to affect it. And I'll tell you another thing that's massively going to affect not only farming, but everything that comes downstream of that, as the war in Iran sparks a global fertilizer shortage and it threatens food prices. How about just food availability? Folks, without fertilizer, you don't even grow the stuff. Farmers around the world are facing fertilizer shortages, and rising costs after the war in Iran disrupted shipments through the Straits of Hormuz, which handles a third. You read that right, a third of global fertilizer trade. Now, on the one hand, we probably got to think about whether or not we should be using petrol-based fertilizers. So that's a whole nother discussion. But nevertheless, farmers around the world are feeling the squeeze of the Iran war. Gas prices have shot up, and fertilizer supplies are waning due to Tehran's near shutdown of the Straits of Hormuz. And the fertilizer shortage is putting livelihood of farmers in developing countries that are already troubled by rising temperatures and erratic weather are further at risk and could lead to people everywhere paying more for food and not being able to get it. It's not just being willing to pay for it. You may not even be able to get it because the process of making food is a lot more involved than people realize, and they take it for granted. So you got way more people standing in line for food than are standing in line to make food. One more time. You got way more people standing in line for food than are standing in line to make or create food. So this isn't good. Oh, by the way, here's that story. California does go dark as 100,000 people mysteriously lose power, straight out of a disaster movie. And of course, the doomsday preppers are having their day. A mysterious blackout in Southern California left over 100,000 people without power Thursday night. There it is. So it was sudden and unprecedented. They didn't know why. Massive outage started suddenly at 7:41 p.m. and affected thousands of homes, businesses, and public roadways throughout the area. So again, those on public power supply, right, are finding their vulnerability is very high. And this is a real thing for us moving forward. So we've got to be a people that pay attention to this as we go. So again, one of the biggest challenges, I think, coming up for not only the Americans, but all countries around the world is going to be electrical power. It's going to be just power in general, and getting prepared for disasters. As a matter of fact, there are warning signs that are being issued right now for Americans are urged to prepare for disaster as 2026 hurricane predictions are revealed. Well, the last time we saw early predictions like this, they turned out to be something for us to pay attention to, folks. Year before last, we were being warned ahead of time of hurricanes, and sure enough, we ended up with some serious hurricanes. So again, we take this stuff seriously, whether how it's created, where they come from. We can speculate on that. Bottom line is get ready. Atlantic hurricane season 2026 is afoot, and Americans are being urged to brace themselves ahead of the hubbub. Preparedness is critical, as 3 to 5 direct impacts in the U.S. are expected this year. So 3 to 5 hurricane impacts are expected this year. And I do know that the weather patterns have been changing. So I think it's very likely that we're going to see some kind of hurricane activity, especially with the warming temperatures, especially in the West. The Western temperatures are very warm. So we've got major changes going on there. And talking about impact, here's something that potentially could impact. How about North Korea testing missiles that claims it can target U.S. mainland? So if you're on the West Coast especially, you are now within range of North Korea. The North Korean leader, Kim Jong-un, has observed a test of an upgraded solid fuel engine for weapons capable of reaching the U.S. mainland and called it a significant development, boasting his country's strategic military arsenal, state media reported on Sunday. And while the test was in line with Kim's stated goal of acquiring more agile, hard-to-detect missiles targeting the U.S. and its allies, some experts speculate North Korea's claim may be an exaggeration. Well, they probably said that about Iran, too, and then they got their butts kicked. So let's not be listening to these experts too closely because they don't seem to be experts at much. And I would say that countries, especially aligned with Russia and China, that are trying to get this technology most likely will. So those in that part of the world, things could get grim in that part of the world. Speaking of that part of the world, did you know that Australia had skies that turned an apocalyptic blood red, and winds from the tropical cyclone Narelle stirred up a rust-colored dust? So, of course, you always have a good explanation for why it occurs, but the fact is it occurred. And videos, of course, and images are a fiery red sky over Western Australia look like something from an apocalyptic or science fiction movie. So warning signs even in that part of the world. How many find that to be interesting? I do. I think it's interesting that no part of the world is exempt. We just heard a report that F-16s were scrambled above Mar-a-Lago in Florida after unusual plane breaches restricted airspace. So again, is there any super safe place? Probably not. We just saw last week that there were Air Force or incursions over bases where Secretary of State Marco Rubio was staying, along with Pete Hegseth, right? And so NORAD has intercepted a private aircraft that entered restricted airspace near Mar-a-Lago, where President Donald Trump was staying on Sunday, and with F-16s deploying flares during the intercept. So this was not a small matter. This was a serious thing where they actually fired flares. So this was not a, oh, gee, I'm a little lost and got off my radar. So we may or may not hear more about that. In fact, if we don't hear any more about it, that's even more concerning. If you don't hear any more about this. Switching gears, the country seems to be turning its attention to high tech. This is not going to go away anytime soon. They're putting a lot of stock in this, and Trump has named NVIDIA, Meta CEOs to Science and Tech Council. So he's bringing close to himself those that he believes are going to be instrumental in what is about to occur. I believe that we are moving heavily toward cryptocurrency, not digital, not the central bank digital currency that got outlawed. So they're going to be embracing crypto. They're going to be embracing other mechanisms because the system they have now is collapsing. The petrodollar will not survive. U.S. President Donald Trump appointed Meta Platform CEO Mark Zuckerberg, Oracle Executive Chairman Larry Ellison, and NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang to a council that will weigh in on AI policy and other issues, the White House said on Wednesday. So they're going to issue policy. Let's see how that works. AI doesn't even listen to the people designing it. So that should be interesting. We're going to move along. I'm running out of time. So I will cover this. Tons of stories in Remnant Watch that you really need to be on top of. One of them is that Canada's House of Commons just passed an anti-Christian bill. So if you're in Canada, be careful because that would basically criminalize quoting the Bible. You read that right. I know. I can't believe I'm reading this headline either. I can't believe that in this time period, in 2026, some nation in the West is this backward that they would do such a thing. Canada's MPs pass a radical bill, C9, in a 186-137 vote, and conservatives are now calling on Christians to pray and flood centers with phone calls and emails opposing this bill. Majority of Canadian MPs have voted to pass a liberal bill that will allow the criminalization of religious expression and belief when quoting parts of the Bible, including about homosexuality and gender. So, no more Sodom and Gomorrah preaching. You're not allowed to talk about it. You're going to be put in jail. This is not a joke, folks. They're getting serious. They're weaponizing against preaching, believe it or not. Preaching is what told you that you will have earthquakes in diverse places, right? And they don't want to hear about this. So here we have it. Deep magnitude, 7.5 earthquake in Pacific. And this, by the way, is a part of the world that continues to get these very big earthquakes. 7.0s and higher are very common for the Xanadu, Tonga. That whole section of the world is definitely affected by earthquakes. So some calling it the Ring of Fire effect, right? So it's a part of that Ring of Fire. But nevertheless, magnitude 7.5 earthquake was detected some 148 miles below the surface of the Pacific Ocean. So this is a deep, deep earthquake. 7.5 is a significant move. So again, does that bode bigger ones down the road? I don't know. So that is something that we have to pay attention to. And this, again, I mentioned this earlier, a devastating fire in northern Iowa egg farm kills several flocks, injures a firefighter. So multiple departments responded to a fire at Hawkeye Pride egg farm Thursday night. And so who thinks that's a coincidence that we're seeing fires at egg farms and so forth? Multiple fire departments responding to a fire. And according to a Facebook post from the Belmont Fire Department, crews were sent to the scene around 6 p.m. Thursday night, and multiple departments battled the fire and brought in water from lakes and area towns. And so these are very difficult fires, by the way, to put out, especially when you've got livestock. You've got things like feed as well as waste that becomes flammable. So very, very hot and very difficult to deal with. So again, yet another food production going up in flames. And how many remember we saw hundreds of these a couple of years ago? So this was a very, very big deal. And now we're seeing it again. So let's hope that doesn't continue as a trend, because I mean, no, we cannot afford to lose any food production in this country at all. None. That is a big deal. By the way, Trump's signature is going to appear on paper currency. Don't have a lot of time to talk about this, but some people might find that interesting, that his name is going to be on currency. So that bodes interesting for those that will be watching. We'll watch that over the next couple of weeks, talk maybe more about that as an interesting sign. By the way, because of this fuel issue, you may suddenly find that you are not allowed to travel quite as freely as you once were. You're going to find it going to be much more difficult to get gas, and you may find there's actual 4-day work weeks imposed, and even driving restrictions on distance and other things. So something to be aware of. Don't have time to go through this report, but definitely an issue to be thinking about in the days to come. And so I do believe that the crisis is going to deepen, even if it were resolved tomorrow. The chain, the process has to sort of be restarted, and that's assuming everything still works. So there's a lot of things that got blown up, right? I think we're going to see much more effect, even if again they stop tomorrow. You're still going to see a lot of effect. I've been warning about this robot future for some time, and here we go. When the president of the United States is, the first lady, I should say, brings this kind of stuff out, I think you need to take it seriously. Teachers Union leaders blasting Melania Trump's robot pitch. Every parent's nightmare is what they're calling it. I would call public schools every parent's nightmare. That's my opinion. At the Workers' First AI Summit, Randy Weingartner said the First Lady suggested that AI teachers will become central to the future of education, misunderstands what kids really need. And so, Randy, these people are, of course, out there promoting public school and public education, which is an epic failure. An epic failure. Anything is better than that. I'm not even kidding. Anything is better than that method. So, really, really foolish to continue to make that point as if it is valid when it is not. And one of the other things that I see very interesting that's coming up is support for cryptocurrency has now shifted. So now all of a sudden people are talking about why some Christians are going all in on cryptocurrency. What happened? Well, they started to figure it out. From churches allowing congregants to tithe with digital coins to blogs promoting Bitcoin. It's biblically sound. There's an emerging Christian crypto subculture. Well, I wondered how long this would take, because compared to fiat currency, which has zero ledger, there's no ledger of any kind. It's just printed. Nobody knows how many there are. Nobody knows where they are. Nobody knows anything. Compared to that, you can't say that this any kind of ledgering is not an improvement. So it only took a while for people to go, wait a second, maybe that's not such a bad idea. Now, should it be Bitcoin? I don't think so. Nevertheless, I do think it's very interesting that there's a lot more interest in this area than there was in the past. So that is now becoming an area that I think we're going to see more and more news on and more acceptance as we go. So those of you that bet on cryptocurrency becoming more mainstream, well, I don't know about your particular token, but the concept is certainly not going away. And I do believe that we as people are going to have to get used to different mechanisms for currency and different mechanisms of living. One of the biggest challenges that I believe people are currently going to be facing is the challenge of the way in which we have grown accustomed to living. We, as a people, as a society, especially in the West, you'll have single person households, single cars on the road, or single person in the car. A lot of over independence to the point where we're so fractured that people become essentially antisocial. This will not survive well. So, you're going to have some melting pot, probably some difficulty, probably some great tribulation that will cause people to lose those things and come back together. And so it is not a good result that if your quote prosperity means you separate from your neighbors, that's a wicked prosperity, right? So what I believe heaven wants is for us to be united, to care one for another. And I believe that the more your lifestyle and the more your living arrangements comport with that, the safer you will be. Those that are continuing down that sort of Babylonian or Egyptian style of thinking will find themselves opposed by spiritual forces they don't fully understand. So I do believe that now's a good time for all the believers out there in Messiah to be praying, to be seeking his face, to cry out to him, to ask him what they need to do as individuals, as a person, because any of you could be next in these world events that keep happening. Any part of the world, any section of the world can suddenly go into turmoil. So this is a very good time to get your prayer life in operation. Well, that's it for tonight. I pray this broadcast has been a blessing and encouragement to you. Again, I thank you to all of you who comment, who like, who subscribe, and who share so that others can be encouraged. Remember that we sit in the heavens, as Messiah has already said, at the 10,000-foot view, I like to say, seated in Mashiach in heavenly places. Let's not forget that. Well, thanks for joining us, and good night.